Hello, my name is Jayd Wynn and this is my testimony. I was born in the Solomon Islands in Honiara. Not long after I was born, my father was on his way home, travelled past this church that he had done so a number of times, but for some reason on this particular morning he saw a light on in it and it was unlocked and opened, and he decided to go in and dedicate me to the Lord for some reason. He was compelled to do so. I then moved to Vanuatu, which was back then called New Hebrides, in a place called Port Vila. To give my mum a little bit of a break, I was sent off at a very early age to go to a preschool which was run by nuns. Whilst I was there, I certainly caused a bit of angst with the nuns at the place, and their general way of dealing with, dare I say it, naughty boys or girls was to actually lock them in a toilet cubicle. They did that to me quite a number of times, and I found it sort of ended up becoming quite a regular occurrence for me. My mum told me that when she was once at the markets there buying fruits and vegetables, that she overheard some nuns discussing this matter, whereby they had said that I managed to somehow lock one of the nuns in the toilets and threw away the keys. It took the convent quite some time, in fact most of the day, to find the keys. And it wasn't long after that, of course, that my mum took me out of that convent. I was about 4 years old when we came back to New Zealand. So when it came to my school years, I found myself very isolated because I was somewhat of a rogue, so to speak. So I sort of lost myself in sport. I found myself leaving school at an early age and ended up moving into a place which I could only describe as a den of iniquity, so to speak. It was a party house where a lot of drugs and alcohol was consumed, and there was a party just about every Thursday and Friday night. Slowly but surely I found myself getting involved with marijuana in a more and more serious way. With smoking marijuana, it tends to take away your motivation and ability to stick to things. So, and concentration was very much an issue for me. And so I just found myself unable to really hold on to jobs, and dishonesty also became a part of my life as well. And even those few friends that I did have, I found that they were sort of justifiably not trusting in me. It was during my inability to keep work down that I found being on the sickness benefit was quite an easy way to sit back and do nothing and just get a pay. Even though it wasn't much, I could sort of subsidise the benefit with doing a bit of criminal activity. Actually, I ended up going to prison for stealing too much chocolate, believe it or not. And it was during one of those stays in Ohura prison. I ended up going along to the church services in the prison and ended up making a commitment to the Lord. But eventually, after time, I sort of was more interested in the world again, and I found myself wallowing again in my own sin. And it was at one of these moments when I was up in Auckland. I was being chased by the police. The helicopter was up in the sky, hovering above, and they were trying to catch me. And I found myself in this warehouse that I'd managed to get in through a skylight. So I didn't want to get caught, because I knew that if I was going to get caught, I was going to spend some time in prison. I found myself in a toilet. How about that? Isn't that ironic? But I just cried out at that time, and I prayed to God. I said, look, God, you know, if you can get me out of this and they don't catch me, I promise you, I'm going to go to a Seventh-day Adventist church. Now, I don't know where that came from. I really don't. It just came out of my heart, and I was pinned to the wall, and I just waited and waited and waited for about 2 hours until I was sure that there was no cops around. Went down to the bottom of the abandoned building and kicked the door out and walked out. But, you know, be sure your sins will find you out, because they sure did. And it wasn't long before I was caught. It wasn't until about 20 years later when I finally came true to that promise that I made to God. There was a time when I had two people that were close to me, two friends. One of them was actually a relative who killed himself, walked off the Scarborough Rock. Also had a friend of mine who committed suicide that I used to play a lot of tennis with, and that kind of rocked me. It really rocked me hard. I began to have thoughts also of myself of committing suicide. I just wanted to end it all. because I consider my life to be pretty much pathetic, actually, to be honest with you. But thankfully the Lord sort of stopped me on a couple of occasions. Once I did take an overdose of pills, and miraculously I survived. But when I told the doctor how much I had taken, he said I shouldn't have been alive. So maybe the Lord saved me. There was a time in 2002 when I was working for a recycling business in Christchurch. Well, on this particular day, I'll never forget the day, it was February the 27th, 2002, and it was my job to tie back the truck as it was coming back down after we had unloaded all the cardboard, and the truck would do this big huge U-turn to go back onto the weigh station to get weighed. You would run along the side of the truck and you'd grab hold of the handle and pull yourself on, and away you'd go. Well, hey, yeah, I didn't judge it right, and I ended up grabbing nothing, and I went straight down. The wheel hit my foot, crushed it, broke every bone in my foot, proceeded to go up my leg, snapped my leg, and went up my leg and ended up balancing on top of my hip as I was pinned to the asphalt on the ground. I yelled out immediately, "Reverse!" And of course the driver, who was shocked at the time, I could add, put the truck in reverse and reversed off me. I did feel the truck actually starting to fall into my stomach, so thankfully he did then, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But I've sort of gone over that whole moment a number of times in my head. If that wheel had have hit my foot about an inch or so to the left, it would have missed my leg, and the way that my body was falling, the wheel probably would have gone over my head. If it had have gone an inch or so to the right, it would have just simply missed my leg and gone straight through me and split me in half, so to speak. So really, I have the Lord to thank for that He placed that wheel just at the right place, going up the right way. Otherwise I just wouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. There was a time that I was in this house that was pretty much a drug house, that the change from the old style TV was transferring over to the digital. And whilst I was flicking through the channels, I noticed that there was this channel called First Light, and I was beginning to realise that what they were saying actually made a lot of sense. I realised that they were a Christian channel. It was the teaching that they gave on the state of the dead, as well as the reality of hell, and the fact that those who do go to hell or who are tormented are not tormented forever and ever and ever, but they become no more. That made me realise that, well, hey, that sounds like a God that I would like to know. That sounds like a God that makes sense. I couldn't understand a God that would torture people through hell for eternity. Because eternity is a long time. Although I was still caught up in the world and still doing my drugs and still involved in a bit of crime here and there, I found myself really attracted to this program more and more. And it got to the stage where I was convicted one day, really strongly, that I should start to make steps toward God and try and put my life right and get things back on the straight and narrow, because I knew that God existed. I'd experienced Him before, and He touched me many times, but through my own selfishness and my own greed and me wanting to be first in everything, I just didn't want God in my life anymore. But I realised that I needed Him. And so I phoned up First Light and I said, look, is there anybody in Christchurch that you can recommend that I contact? I need to talk to someone. So they gave me a phone number, and it stayed on my phone for well over a year. I still couldn't get myself the courage to phone them up, because I just wasn't at that place whereby I could just even speak to anybody. I was interested, but I was fearful. I didn't really want to let go of all those things I was still holding on to. So anyway, finally came to a stage where I just didn't want to do drugs anymore. I was sick of it, you know? And I was just lying there one day and looking at TV, looking at First Light, looking at my marijuana next to me and realising, well, this doesn't add up, you know? Here I am interested in watching this program that is about God and about His love for me and all the things He's done for me and how much He can do for me, and I'm still doing this stuff. I've got a decision. And then I believe the Lord was saying in my heart, well, hey, you can have this, you can have the money, you can have the drugs, or you can have me. I'll have you. God, help me. I've been here before. I've done this before. I've come to you, but I've run away. God, can you really help me? I don't know what to do. But I've been watching on First Light how you can do things to other people and how you've done them to other people. Well, I need you to do that to me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to do it. All I can do is trust you. Help. And so I collected my marijuana, put it in a bottle, collected all my paraphernalia. I had all my pornography that I had. I just took one part of that pornography and I put it in a bag, put my marijuana in the bag. I had gambling stuff, I had lotto. I couldn't go one drawer without having my ticket with the numbers that I had on it, through fear of actually missing out on all these millions so-called dollars. Put that in the bag, and I felt this overwhelming compulsion to burn them all. So anyway, I held on to them for about 3 or 4 days. Didn't even, I realised after about half a day, I didn't even have any desire for these things. I didn't want to do anything like that again. It was almost like I had a hatred for these things. Then I phoned Pastor Gordon. And I said, I need to speak to you. He didn't know me who I was from a bar of soap. And he said, well, what do you want to talk about? And I just proceeded to just briefly tell him my testimony and how I wanted to walk away from all these things in my life. And also I asked him, look, is it biblical that I should actually burn all these things? And he said, oh yeah, for sure. He said in Acts, many of the new believers came to the apostles and actually bought all their satanic and their sorcery books and burnt them all. He said, if you want to do that, I'm pleased to do that for you. Would you like to meet tomorrow night at church and we can go out the back and we can burn it all? And that's what I did. From being someone that was totally immersed in pornography, drug addiction and gambling, to not have any desire for those things anymore, I can only say is a total and utter complete miracle. There are many people out there who are probably listening to me now who have known me and who are even saying, oh, that guy, my goodness. Well, if he can do it in my life, he can do it in yours. You just got to trust him. There's many people out there who are watching this also that I've really mistreated, I've abused, I've taken advantage of your good nature, I've ripped you off, I've lied to you, I've stolen from you, I've let you down in a big way. Well, to all of you that I have done that, and I've done it to many people, but I want to say I'm very sorry, and I really do mean it. The person that you see now is a completely different person. I'm still Jayd. I still have the weird sense of humour and I still do the mistakes. But, you know, there is someone that's living in me, and his name is Jesus, and he is the one that gives me the ability to rise above those things that will pull me down. It was like all my life I was trying to hide in a dark cave, but it was almost like Jesus was there with a torch shining it on me, and he wouldn't let me go. He would not take that light off me. And no matter where I went in that cave, there he was, shining his light onto me. And I can just say that I'm so thankful he's done it, and I don't know where I'd be without him.
Every Christian has a story to tell. God can use one person's testimony to help encourage and even change the life of another. You'll never know how your story of coming to Christ could help impact someone's life if you don't share it. Alt Testimonies, a life transformed.